So hello everyone, my name is Gabrielle Magnin, and I'm the Resource Inventory Manager for the Community Housing Transformation Center. So we are really happy to welcome all of you today for this webinar about energy efficiency and the retrofit with the insights of two regional energy coaches. We are going to start with a few housekeeping items and also note that the chat box is already open, so you can add your question there, and we will take some time during the presentation to answer them. Okay, before we dive into the content, I'm going to say a quick note about interpretation. So I will say this in English and then in French. So today's discussion is recorded and it will be in English with interpretation into French. So if you want to listen in English, don't touch anything. But if you want to listen in French, as shown here on your screen, you can click on the globe icon for interpretation, or if you don't have the globe icon, it would be the more icon, the three little dots, and then select the French channel. Donc en français, la discussion d'aujourd'hui, elle est enregistrée et elle va se dérouler en anglais avec une interprétation simultanée en français. Donc pour écouter en anglais, juste ne touchez à rien. Et pour écouter en français, cliquez sur l'icône d'interprétation qui représente un globe terrestre ou sur l'icône plus, donc c'est les trois petits points, et sélectionnez le canal en français. So first, as we gather online from many places across Turtle Island, we want to acknowledge that we are joining this session from lands that have long been home to indigenous peoples. So we recognize the enduring presence, the rights and stewardship of First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples, and we encourage everyone here to reflect on and contribute to the indigenous lands from which they are joining today. There should be a link in the chat. So if you want to learn about the territory your home or your work is located, you can consult it. And this is a website available in English and in French. That's the Whose Land map. And as for me, I acknowledge that I live on the unceded lands and water of Tiohtià:ke, and that no treaty or agreement ceded this place, and I recognize it as the traditional living territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka. So, if you're not already familiar with us, we are the Community Housing Transformation Center. The center is a catalyst for the growth and the preservation of community housing in Canada. You can visit our website to learn more about us. Note that the center provides various services, so we have funding programs, and we also have a diversity of tools and resources, which brings us to why we are here today. Because this webinar is part of a series, that's the Center Knowledge Sharing Series, and it explores proven models and highlights the people who make them possible. We also have other knowledge sharing activities or tools, including our resource inventory, which is a list of resources curated by the center's team to meet your needs. And you can access both the knowledge sharing webinar series and the resource inventory through our website. You will also have the links in the chat. So I'm really happy to welcome our speakers of the day, Majed Agaya and Dami Dabiri. They are both from the Regional Energy Coach program, and they will talk more about energy efficiency and retrofit today. So Majed, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Thanks, Gabrielle. Thanks, Gabrielle. Hello, everyone. I want to clear up some misconceptions that have become common regarding energy efficiency. When you hear energy efficient retrofit, what comes to mind? Usually it's solar panels on the roof or a shiny new heat pump. These are big capital items with big sticker prices to match. And for a nonprofit housing provider or a co-op with a tight budget and aging stock, that picture can be out of reach or overwhelming to implement. So I'm going to outline that this picture is backwards. In reality, the highest impact moves are usually the least glamorous ones. and they're more accessible than people think. We'll use three questions to guide us. One, what solutions actually have the biggest impact? Two, which ones are easier to implement than people assume? And three, what should we do with the well-known solutions? Usually it's solar, uh, heat pumps, things that everyone talks about already. By the end, I'll show you where the Regional Energy Coach program fits in because this isn't just theory, it's the work we do with providers across Canada every day. Next slide, please. So I'll go through a few myths. Myth number one, solar and heat pumps come first. This is the shiny object problem, I call it. Solar and heat pumps get the press, the rebates, the photo ops, but if you put a heat pump on a leaky, uninsulated building, you've bought a bigger, more expensive heat pump than you need, and it'll run harder to compensate for a building that's bleeding heat. The envelope comes first. Air sealing, attic insulation, wall insulation where feasible, window upgrades at end of life. These are boring. They're also where you get the best dollar per kilowatt hour saved. And critically, they shrink the mechanical system you eventually buy. A tight building needs a smaller heat pump, so you save twice. Myth number two, deep retrofits need a massive budget and new construction. This is the one that freezes providers. Often they say, we can't afford a deep retrofit, so we'll do nothing. But shallow and staged retrofits deliver real savings, 10 to 30% typically, usually through low risk measures. That's rooftop insulation when the roof is due anyway, heat recovery ventilation, weather stripping, LED relamping. None of these require tenant displacement. None require refinancing. They fit inside normal capital planning cycles. And myth number three, passive design is exotic architect stuff. It sounds fancy, but passive design is mostly common sense applied early in the project. Which which way does the building face? Where are the windows? Is there shading on the south side in summer? Do we have thermal mass that evens out temperature swings? Is the ventilation controlled or just random leakage? These are decisions, not products. They cost almost nothing if you make them at the design stage. They cost a fortune to retrofit later. For new construction and substantial renovations, this is the single highest leverage conversation a housing provider can have. So, where does that leave well-known solutions that I spoke of earlier, solar and heat pumps? These aren't wrong, just out of order. They work with a good envelope. So let me show you the numbers. Next slide, please. So by the numbers, I'll walk through the chart bottom to top. Smart thermostats save about 15% of winter electricity bills on their own. This is cheap, fast, real, and easy to implement. LED relamping saves about 20% of lighting load. Again, an easy win, but lighting is only a slice of total use. Shallow retrofits, your typical mix of air sealing, weather stripping, modest insulation top-ups. This lands in the 10 to 30% savings. Call it 25% as a reasonable planning number. On to building envelope. These envelope upgrades, if done properly, that's by envelopes, I mean attic and walls, air sealing, and windows. They get you around 30% reduction on their own. This is the sweet spot for most affordable housing retrofits. On to deep retrofits. The envelope plus mechanical system replacement plus controls can hit 50 to 60%. That's where federal and utility programs want you to go, and it's where the biggest rebates live. Now, there's three stats on the right or left, depending on the language. So 64%. Space heating dominates residential energy use in Canada. That's NRCan data. Every percentage point you shave off the heating load translates directly into bill savings for tenants and operational savings for providers. 70%. The building standing today will be in use in 2050. This is the sector's biggest problem, and its opportunity. We can't build our way out. We have to retrofit. And $0. Passive design choices, as I spoke earlier, made at this stage, the stage being at the beginning, the design stage. Strategies, like I mentioned, with orientation, shading, window placement, thermal mass considerations. These costs essentially nothing extra compared to building without them. The cost is in making them later or not at all. Next slide, please. So I'll walk through the cost slash savings landscape. And just to note, um, these positions are typical for Canadian nonprofit housing retrofits or co-ops. Actual costs and savings vary by building, climate, and program. So this scatter plots every measure by its upfront cost on the horizontal against its typical energy savings on the vertical. I'll walk through it by region. So on the upper left, which is the sweet spot, air sealing and attic insulation, low cost, high savings. This is the best bang for your buck in almost any affordable housing retrofit. This is envelope first in one picture. On the bottom left, smart thermostats and LEDs. These are cheap and easy wins. Good to do, but you can see they don't move the needle very far on their own. And in the middle, heat recovery ventilators and windows, other small energy efficiency measures. These are moderately costed, and they also provide moderate savings. They're worth doing in the right context. For example, indoor air quality for heat recovery ventilators or end-of-life replacement for windows, but it's not where you start. On the upper right, wall insulation and heat pumps. These are the biggest savings, but they take real capital. Sequence these after the envelope basics. A tight building needs a smaller, cheaper heat pumps. On the far right, solar photovoltaics. So these are an example of on-site generation, not efficiency. It offsets energy use, but doesn't reduce the need. It is best as a later move after you've shrunk the building's load. So the overall story is that the upper left is where most providers should start, and very few usually do. So the landscape is real, but sequencing it, stacking the funding, getting it built, that's where we come in as regional energy coaches. Next slide, please. So what do we do with all of this? In reality, this is where the regional energy coach program comes in. Three things that we do for nonprofit housing providers and co-ops across the country. Number one, we provide strategic guidance. We do the building assessment. We help you sequence the work. Then we think about envelope first, mechanical, on-site generation, whatever the project needs. It's very customized. And we push back on shiny object instinct. We help you avoid the common trap of buying an oversized heat pump for a leaky building, for example. Number two, funding navigation. There's real money out there, whether that's the Green Municipal Fund, federal funding, provincial utility rebates, and favorable financing from banks that are offering different loans for housing providers, whether it's greener homes, successor programs. The landscape is varied and can become quite complex. So the problem isn't a lack of funding in most cases. It's navigating which program works with which measure and how to attack them. That's what we do. And number three, project support. We stay with you, not just a report on a shelf. We work with your building managers, your contractors, your board, from the first conversation through to commissioning at the very end. So I want to emphasize that this service is complimentary. Basically, it's free if you're a housing provider or a co-op. It's delivered in partnership with BC Nonprofit Housing Association, the Manitoba Nonprofit Housing Association, Indigenous Clean Energy, Co-op Housing Federation of Canada, Clean Foundation, and CQC Ash in Quebec. So each of these organizations has an energy coach embedded in different regions across Canada. So you're fully covered wherever you are. Just reach out to us and we'll connect you with the right coach. So if you take one thing from all of this, start with the envelope, think passive first, and call a coach before you call a contractor. Thank you very much. And I'll hand it over to Danny.
Yeah, thanks again everyone for tuning in. Today, the case study, I guess the real life scenario to follow the fundamentals that Majeda just told us about is a multi-measure project that we're working on in Salmo, in the village of Salmo in BC. The site is Salmo Valley Estates, and the society is Salmo Area and Supportive Housing Society. That's the project, the society, it's one that's dear to my heart. So yeah, let's just dive into it. Before we get into the project, I just want to set the stage a little bit for the society that the building belongs to and a bit about the building itself. In terms of the society, the inception of Samo and Area Supportive Housing Society happened in 1997 when community members gathered to address a need that they saw in their community. And in that way, I would say they're a textbook society in that they're for and by the people with deep roots in the community. So what was this need? Essentially, there wasn't an option for seniors who wanted independent living without worrying about maintenance and meals and a place with amenities and activities that would enable them to enjoy themselves. That place did not exist. Somewhere that would allow them to remain in the community in their senior years where they could feel confident that they had help and community if they needed it, that wasn't something that was available. Um, Addressing that need led to the construction and continued operation of Salmo Valley Estates. The little group that I mentioned who recognized this need, they made it official in November 4th, 2002, when they became officially incorporated as the Society of Salmo and Area Supportive Housing. And membership support came from all over the village of Salmo, community organizations, members of the community at large. And I'm highlighting this because, again, it's just a testament to how much of a community-minded society they are, and again, those deep roots in the community. So Salmo Valley Estates itself, the building, the construction started in the fall of 2013, and the first residents moved in about a year later. But I mean, of course, as we all know, there's a lot that went into that before getting to that point. And I want to highlight some of that. There was the needs assessment, there was the numerous community fundraising efforts. We're talking bake sales, talent shows, dinners, auction sales. And it was a great way to raise money for the project, of course, but it also served to bring the community together. Then there was finding and purchasing land, and we all know how difficult that can be. And then finally, construction happened. And again, highlighting that because it's just such a great example of resourcefulness, drive, community-mindedness. They're all qualities that enable the construction of this building in the first place, but it's also what enabled these projects that we're going to talk about. And I think it just deserves to be shouted out to the max. A bit more about the building, 2 stories, 20 units, and it's for seniors. There's meals, amenities, activities. I should mention that if you have questions at any point, just, yeah, interject, turn off your mic, put it in the chat. Happy to keep this a conversation. So now that we are acquainted with the building and the society, let's talk a bit more about the projects. I would like to start with the why. What motivated these projects? Number one, we had two pieces of major equipment in the building that were not functioning as they should have been. The first was a swamp cooler in the penthouse mechanical room serving the hallway makeup air unit. It wasn't providing adequate cooling due to the low cooling efficiency of evaporative cooling systems. And more importantly, it was also prone to leaking, which was a big issue because it's right on top of the building. If it leaks, then you have the entire building below getting water damage. The second piece of equipment was a dual-fuel unit, dual-fuel heat pumps unit serving the dining hall, and it wasn't providing adequate heating due to an undersized heating coil. Additionally, we had outdoor air units for various heat pumps and for the heat pumps I just mentioned, and as well as other air conditioning units in that rooftop mechanical room that needed to be relocated because the summer temperatures in there were affecting their cooling capacity. So between the leaking swamp cooler damaging the building over time, the cooling issues, which I would mention is can be particularly significant given the demographic of the folks in the building, there was some pretty big drivers to get some work done here. In the fall of 2023, the society reached out to the mechanical contractor about the overheating and leaking issues. The mechanical contractor at that time then conducted an assessment that revealed the cause of the issues, as I described earlier. We're quite lucky here because the mechanical contractor knows the building well and is super knowledgeable, and I'll speak a bit about that later on. After the contractor's assessment, there was a decent amount of clarity about what needed to get done, but there was still the funding issue. And that's when the society reached out to us, the BCMPHA. We audited the building to discover other projects, other energy conservation projects that we could combine with the necessary measures I've just described. And the audit also helped to give us a better sense of what the potential funding could be. After our site visits and our audits, we decided to pursue an L2, and that was for a couple of reasons. Number one, again, it was one of the funding sources, again, was related to funding. One of the funding sources we wanted to pursue needed that L2 as a requirement. And number two is that that deeper level of analysis would reveal more about the systems in terms of feasibility and constraints. And then, yeah, design and construction started in May and November of last year, respectively.
Danny, if I can ask,
Oh, always, please.
were there any surprising findings from the L2? For people who don't know L2, it's level 2 energy audit that
Yeah.
kind of changed the final project scope.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, that's a great question. The in addition to what the assessment the mechanical contractor already did, we did discover in the kitchen that there was another overheating issue. The folks in the kitchen would just have fans on all the time just because it was so warm. And so that actually led to the inclusion of, which in the next slide here you'll see, but we have a kitchen mini split heat pump that led to the inclusion of this in the scope. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Does anyone else have any questions? Other questions before I continue? Okay. Yeah, you were seeing the future a little bit there, Majed, because yeah, I was going to go into the scope next. So between the energy audit or the energy study, our audit, the contractor's assessment, we had a clear picture of the building, the projects we're going to implement, and the relevant constraints and considerations. We crunched all of this context, and that helped us come up with the scope that you see in front of you here. I'm not going to read through the entirety of it, but maybe a couple that I will just point out just because I didn't mention it earlier as a need. But the natural gas backup generator and the rooftop solar PV were included because we had funding for these systems, so we included that. And the backup generator actually kind of was great synergy, which is something I'll talk about later on. But the relocated outdoor air units and the natural gas backup generator actually ended up on the same concrete, the same cement platform. Um, but we needed that platform in the first place because of this backup generator. So that was also part of the scope. So how much of all of this cost? It's always the big question. Here we can see to the 10,000 or to the thousand, the costs for these projects. Again, we wouldn't read out the cost here because you can see that, but just know that overall this project scope is coming to about $500,000.
And speaking about cost, there is a question in the chat
Yeah.
about the typical cost of an energy audit and L2, so the extended energy study
Mhm.
that you mentioned.
Yeah. So an L2, it depends on the scope, but typically between $10,000 and $15,000. Yeah. Again, yeah, depends again if you want to go deeper on one system, want to go deeper on multiple systems, that number can change, but yeah, you can expect between 10 and 15. I've seen a lot of them come in at around $12,000. Okay, so the project team, again, something I'll speak more about the importance of later. We have Melanie Cox, our contact at Salmo Valley Estates, who has been super massively instrumental for this project. And I'll say more about that later on. We have NG Refrigeration, which is a mechanical contractor. EAS are doing the electrical work. Infinity Solar, as their name suggests, are the solar PV contractors. Erie Creek has been on hand for general tasks like making the cement platform for the generator and the relocated outdoor units. Extropic is the mechanical consultant, the mechanical engineer that did the L2, and then you have us, the BCMPHA, who helped with navigating funding.
I just have a quick question too.
Yeah, hit me.
Um, how important was having a mechanical contractor who already knew the building well, and what advice would you give to other housing providers when building the project team?
That's a fantastic question. That's something that it's one of the most unique aspects of this project, I would say, the fact that NG Refrigeration, they already knew the building. And in addition to that, they're kind of this weird mix between, they're a Swiss Army knife of sorts. I think, there are challenges with doing retrofit projects in smaller communities like Samo, but it's a double-edged sword, if you can look at that other side, because the fact that NG Refrigeration is such a Swiss Army knife is probably because they're in a smaller community and they've had to kind of wear different hats. They have to be the electrical contractor sometimes, they have to be the mechanical contractor or the consultant. And so that breadth of knowledge, in addition with them knowing the building well, they've been the mechanical contractor probably since the building's inception. It was instrumental. If you can have someone that knows the building in that role, it's night and day, I would say. It's not always possible, um, but if you can, it's totally worth it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, construction started not too long ago in November of last year, and I would say we're about 80% through the scope. The outdoor units that I mentioned that were in the penthouse mechanical room have come outside, and the storm cooler that was causing so much headache has been decommissioned. That will never leak and yeah, damage the building again. The kitchen mini split heat pump has been installed. We're still waiting for a few of the outdoor air units for the new heat pumps. We're expecting those pretty shortly. The permits and net metering for solar is complete. We've ordered that, and install is probably going to be completed by the end of May. And the generator has arrived. That's on the cement pad. We're waiting to attach the gas line for that, but again, that'll probably happen over the next couple of months. So we're looking at full completion probably by the start of the summer. And just, yeah, some pictures for you to feast your eyes on of the project that has the progress that's been made so far. I love looking at this picture because, yeah, obviously I've seen the building before all of this was there. And yeah, it's just really fantastic to see how far we've come. Just to describe a little bit, these are the relocated outdoor air units here, and one of these is actually the new outdoor air unit for the new mini split heat pump for the kitchen, which is right here. And I guess you can't wait. Let me see if I can I do that? Laser pointer. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, so right here is the new mini split for the kitchen. You have the generator here on the cement pad. It's like to the right of these over here. And this is the control unit for the generator, the new control unit for the generator. And then that's that gas line that we're waiting to get connected. So upon completion of these projects, we're going to have a longer lasting and more energy efficient Salmo Valley estates. That's obviously a great benefit. One other benefit that I want to highlight though is the increase in capacity for Salmo Valley estates and anyone else that was involved in this project or folks in the vicinity, because these projects are a massive undertaking. Doing one will change you for the better. It will equip you to do projects that are similar or even bigger in the future. And I would say, in addition to the hard skills gained of going through a project like this, there's a paradigm shift that occurs mentally. Now, your conception of what's possible is, both for yourself and for the people around you, is different. I know that's the case. That's definitely been the case for me, and for at least one other society in the village of Salmo. I
Uh,
wanted, yeah,
Sorry, I'm
go
going to
ahead.
interject again. Yeah, just
Yeah,
before you get
no
into some
worries.
details there.
Yeah,
Um, so the project involved relocating some outdoor units from the rooftop mechanical room. How often do installation, location, and ambient conditions get overlooked in system performance problems?
yeah, that's a good question. I would say honestly, it doesn't happen. It happens fairly often, probably about 30 to 40% of the time, I would say. Um, but I think this building's is a bit unique because, I mean, if you're installing heat pumps, typically your heat pumps your outdoor air units would be outside, maybe because of space constraints or what have you, or the wiring or the ducting, the the outdoor air units, the condensing units had to be in the rooftop mechanical room for this one. Um, but it's not like it's most of the time, but it's often enough that it's significant and it's something to think about. Yeah, if you have, which we found here, if you have a unit that's performing poorly in terms of cooling or heating, it's very easy to say, oh, let's upsize the unit or get a different piece of equipment. But sometimes it's as simple as letting your outdoor air unit breathe.
Yeah, so it's definitely something to consider, you're saying.
100%. Yeah.
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 Okay.
Cool. Thanks for the questions, Majed. And yeah,
No problem.
if everyone else, feel free to follow Majed's lead if you have a question
Yeah,
regarding.
there's a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Um, so what's the total capital cost of the retrofits? I think you had a slide on that earlier.
Yeah.
Um,
So you can see those costs here. We're looking at about $500,000.
and what's the value of the rebates available to offset this capital cost?
Yeah. So we had funding from a few sources. Utility is a fund administered through BC Housing. So this project was actually fully covered.
And the last question was, what energy savings would be recovered per year?
Yeah, that's where if that's a great question. If we can hold on to that question, that was actually the slide I was just about to get into. This one right here. So drilling into the energy efficiency outcomes a bit more, just to give you a sense of the extent of savings we're expecting and that you can expect from your projects. For this, I'll spotlight mainly the three energy efficiency measures, because for some of the other measures we're upsizing the unit to deal with cooling issues or adding a heat pump to deal with cooling issues. In those cases, you won't see savings because you're increasing energy efficiency. But for the addition of a dual fuel heat pump for the kitchen MUA and replacing the swamp cooler with a heat pump, you should expect to see savings. This graph here, this table here shows kind of the relative energy costs. I'm going to turn on my laser pointer again. Okay. Yeah, shows the relative energy cost and GHG savings for the three measures. If there's one plus sign, it's between 0 and 20% savings. Two plus signs is between 20 and 50% savings, and three plus signs is anything above 50% in savings. A couple of key things to note. The solar PV measure doesn't technically save energy, and which is why you see there's a dash here, because you're just shifting where that energy is coming from. It's not an efficiency measure. And for a grid that's as clean as BC's, the GHG savings are pretty low too, but the cost reduction savings are massive because you're essentially now generating all of your own electricity, and electricity can be expensive, especially if you have demand charges and all of that. So that's for the rooftop solar PV. For the heat pump measures, they result in significant energy savings, but you don't get any monetary savings from them. Not significant, I would say, in this specific case. In this specific case, that's because electricity is about 3 times cheaper, more expensive than natural gas, which is also about the efficiency gain from switching from gas to heat pump. So that kind of cancels out. Of course, this isn't always the case. Say, for example, you're switching from propane or electric heating to a heat pump, then these cost savings go up to the double plus level. Um, but the key thing to note is that the savings you get are dependent on your specific situation. So just assess that well and know what your objectives are. Sometimes it's monetary, of course. Some people are focused on greenhouse gas reduction. Some people, like in this case, are focused mainly on the increase in comfort. But yeah, just knowing that your variables beforehand helps to make a better assessment. I'm sure there are going to be questions after this one, so I'll pause.
Uh, I have one question. Do you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. What would you say is your return on investment on the whole project?
It's hard to speak to the whole project because there's so many there's so many measures that are involved here. Overall, because of just how lucrative, maybe let's say the rooftop solar PV project is, it's positive. I think it's like plus 14% or 20%, somewhere in that range. Um, Most of that is coming from the rooftop solar PV system. You essentially get no return on investment. Like there is, but it's not significant really for the heat pump measures. But again, that's because you're swapping from natural gas to electricity.
I see that you've got a fairly big generator in your in your system. What does it feed actually? Does it feed the whole place or just some parts of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's some parts of it. It's the common spaces. It's the common spaces, so like hallway lighting, hallway systems, the kitchen. Um, yeah.
Okay. So how what's your evaluation of how long your building is going to last? So the life expectancy of your building.
Yeah. So this building was built in 2014. So we're about, what's that? Just over a decade into the life of the building.
Yeah.
So yeah, this building is going to be here for a while yet.
Would you call it 100 years or more?
Oh, uh, yes, but you probably don't want to get to the 100-year mark without doing some significant work. I would say before you have to do anything major, structural walls will probably be at least 60 years. So maybe another 50 years from now.
Hmm. I'm asking the question because the building I'm in is already 55 years old.
Okay.
So that we all wonder whether we should aim for 100 years overall or even more, because the tendency today is to not demolish what can last, say, a decade more.
Yes,
So
100%
we're
evident.
we're uncertain.
Yeah.
Should we invest big money,
Hmm.
uh, like at the age the building is at now, say about 60 years old?
Hmm.
And should we expect a life expectancy of over 100 years? My feeling is that it could go to as long as 150 years if you're very careful. It's just a gut feeling.
And I would say that's, again, but again, it also depends on your specific building, like is the facade brick? When was it built? What are the bones like? What's the variables are many. I'm intrigued about your building, Maxime, if you want to connect after, or like we can also talk about your
Okay,
building a bit more at the end.
okay. That's in Montreal, and it's brick on the outside,
Mm,
and it was built as well, intended profitable building just for rents.
mm,
And then it was acquired by a cooperative,
mm.
which is where I live now.
Yeah. So your gut feeling is probably closer to correct actually, because brick, I mean, yeah, will be here forever,
Hmm.
but then it also has its own challenges to keep it performing for those 100 or 100 plus years. But
You're right. Yeah.
yeah. And of course, there are the systems within. But again, I'm going to get sucked into your interesting project. So I will progress. And if we have a bit of time at the end, we can talk more about it.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for those questions, by the way, Maxime. Does anyone else have questions about
I
the
just
say? Yeah.
I put a similar one in the Dropbox there, and so the problem with I know what we're doing and why we're doing it. I understand that. I'm not against it, but the problem is from a capital perspective, you have to go and ask for money based on the return. So I did a quick calculation there based on in BC, buildings last for 25 years. Let's say equipment lasts for 15, 20 years, sometimes 20, 25 years. So with a capital cost of $434,000 over 25 years, you have to save $1,400, ignoring upcharges and things, but $1,400 a month in energy to prove to the power that be, then I can, it makes sense to do that. That's what I was getting to with my previous question.
$1,400 a month or a year
A month.
with a capital cost of 34.
434 by 25 is 17,000 a year, which is $1,400 a month to save to cover that capital cost. So the problem that I have is when you go and look for those to get the capital cost covered, and BC Housing has less and less money nowadays, you have to show where that return is. And that's the challenge, right? So that's why I'm looking. So I think the important thing from my perspective is to have numbers to back up that we spent this, we say this. That's going forwards. That's going to be really important because those are some of the questions I get asked for when I try and look for cash to do this kind of work.
Sorry, I'm happy to speak to that, but for the math, if you're saving $1,400 a month, that's what, like $18,000 a year,
Yep.
which will mean you recover your project costs in 2 years.
So I was it $40,000 cost or $430,000 cost?
Oh, I thought you said 34,000. That's what I heard.
The numbers you showed were $434,000,
Okay,
right?
yeah, one of the project. I thought you were speaking specifically about the heat pump project.
One
Yeah,
project you have is 434, so it's $1,400 a month that we have to show that we benefit from, right? So
yeah,
that's the argument that I have to have with my getting funding is I can, if I don't save $1,400 a month, then the answer often comes to me is, well, why bother doing it?
yeah, correct. Just to make a clarification, yeah. So that $500,000 is for all the projects, for the entire project package, so the rooftop solar, the heat pumps, everything. Um, for the entire project package, there is a return on investment. You will get your money back because we're looking at an ROI of like 15% for the total. And I think I mentioned that that's mostly due to the rooftop solar. If you were to isolate these, then the equation, yeah, go ahead.
What I'm saying is, with those savings there, we have to have numbers. The industry has to have numbers to support what we're trying to do here. So by saying we will get a 15% return, 15% of what? So we have to show that our bills are X, or we're going to save this much, therefore it covers the capital cost. Because without that, I'm dead in the water getting some of this money for some of these retrofits.
Yeah, that's true. And the equation, the numbers are different depending on your situation. You know, in this case, we're switching from gas to electricity in some cases, so some of the equipment. In other cases, how do I put it? The business case is easier to make, let's just say, which is why you should always do the assessment. It's not always a no-brainer. This is what you should do. You should always assess. I will say that I've seen tons of projects that show return on investment, which is a return on investment is 15% on top of the money you invested over the life of the equipment. So you get the money you invested and 15% on top of that. And I think you can take that to whatever your financing or funding source is and say, hey, over the life of these projects, we expect to get whatever it is, $500,000 and 15% on top of that back. I think if you take that to your funding source, it's like, are they saying no if you show them that?
You've just made a statement there. Where's that supported? I need some facts to support that. That's because maybe I think it's 14%, or maybe someone says it's 17%. Where are the facts behind that to show it's a 15% return? That's what we need in the industry to say, this is what the facts are. This project here, we got a return of 14%. This project, we got a return of 13%. If we have those facts, it makes it so much easier to get funding to do this work.
Yeah.
But if it's a statement if it's a subjective statement, it's much harder.
Yeah,
so
it's
yeah,
not.
just as the timekeeper, I would suggest that maybe thanks for all the questions, but maybe we can wrap the conversation first. So Dami, if you can talk about maybe the challenges and lessons.
Yeah, thanks.
And that's a highlight also some challenges of this type of project. So that's a really interesting conversation. But and then for the last few minutes, we will dive
We'll talk
into
about it.
other
Sounds good.
questions. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay. So for the considerations and constraints, what are some factors to consider if you're looking to do a similar project? There are a number of them, but I'll touch on some that I feel like are really important. The roof structural capacity. We did a structural assessment of the roof early on to understand if the solar installation was a good idea and it matched our structural capacity. And lucky for us, the roof had the needed capacity, but it's not always the case, especially if the building is older. So definitely check this early. And even if you're not quite ready to do a solar PV installation, that's fine. Still do that ahead of time so you have that information when you're actually ready to install your solar PV system. In our case, the solar contractor did the structural assessment, but it doesn't have to be them. You can engage with a structural engineer to do that. Another roof-related structural issue that we ran into was upgrading the roof anchors. And thanks to the window cleaning folks that were there earlier I would say earlier on, they identified that the anchors were not adequate for folks to work on the roof from. And it was fairly straightforward to do, but again, also a consideration that we had to make. For electrical upgrades, thankfully, we didn't need any capacity or service upgrades, but we did have to spend a bit of time figuring out how to tie these different systems being installed together. And it required tight coordination. And it's something I'll talk a bit more about in the next slide, but again, just something to be conscious of. Generator location. Figuring out the ideal location for this one was fun because there are a few factors we were considering. There's the gas supply for the generator, there's proximity to the building's fresh air intake, there is proximity to the building's distribution panel. If you're installing a generator, there are definitely things to think about. BESS. So this stands for a battery energy storage system. And this project doesn't have one, but that exception I think is important to speak to. because we're installing a PV system, it would have been so easy to have a battery be the backup instead of natural gas generator. But essentially, it was because of cost. A BESS of the same size as the generator we installed is about double the cost. And so it was not feasible for this project. The technology is evolving, so definitely consider it for your project if you're doing one in the future. Just pausing for effect and for questions, but I'll move along. The challenges and the lessons. Again, I'll highlight a few of these. Multi-measure projects. So much of what was learned is directly related to the multi-measure nature of this project. They are harder, more complicated, but totally worth it. Why exactly is it worth it? For one, you often don't have a choice. You know, I mentioned in this case that we had funding for the solar and the generator, and so we did it. And so yeah, that was an opportunity for us to take advantage of that funding in our case. But another reason is efficiency. Similar to how it would be a bit ridiculous to go to the grocery store 3 different times to get 3 different items. It's the same here. We're able to bundle all the measures at once, which meant that, for example, the electrician came in once, did all that work, and then the synergy between the measures as well was better than if we were doing those serially. So they're complex. Multi-major projects are more complex. How do you navigate that? The one phrase I have here is integrated project design. And the gist of that is essentially to get everyone together early. One example of that for this project, initially early in the project, we had all the contractors and all the consultants sit together and talk about the interdependencies and the complexities of synergizing these projects. And there was, of course, a lot of collaboration that happened after that meeting, but it was a great starting point to start to wrap our hands around the hairiness of this project. The project team, I have this in all caps because it is so important, especially for a multi-measure project like this one. You need a solid team to achieve the best outcomes. It's just as simple as that. And I will split it into 2 major portions. They are the subject matter experts. So in this case, we have the contractors, we have the consultants, and I will say leaning on them is so important. But then you have the project champion, who's probably even more important than your team of experts. A saying that I heard once about the band Queen comes to mind after the death of Freddie Mercury, and someone said it's like having a top of the line sports car without in the garage without a driver. And that's what your project champion does. They provide a vision, they provide motivation, they provide energy for everyone else to follow. And here again is where I'll shout out Melanie because she's been super awesome. I mean, it took 2 years to go from inception to shovel it in the ground. Funding scares, delays through all of that, but she was determined to make the project happen for her residents. And so yeah, I would say it's really important to have that kind of person driving the charge. For construction planning, the main thing here I want to say is do it. As I mentioned before, it took us 2 years to go from inception to construction. Half this time, especially because again, it was a multi-measure project, was about figuring out how we're going to do this intentionally. The phrase measure twice, cut once comes to mind, and that's what this pre-construction planning phase is for, to really nail down the specifics of what you're going to do. The timeline to secure funding. So if half of the time before construction is for planning, I would say the other half was for securing funding. And the main thing I want to highlight here is that this can take quite a bit of time. So you have to factor that into your project. And I also want to say that this is another opportunity for you to lean on your experts. The recs are experts in navigating the funding field. So definitely feel free to reach out to them when it comes to funding. Equipment lead times. So it's not news that we're seeing longer and longer equipment lead times. And like I mentioned earlier, it's actually pushed back the completion timeline for this project for us. Now, in our case, it hasn't been too big of an issue because the tenants aren't really impacted by the construction, and we don't really have strict funding deadlines. But I will say that keep that in mind for your project because it can be significantly more impactful for your project than it has been for us. So you've probably noticed that one of the main themes that has been recurring as I've gone through this presentation is how things take time. And I don't think that's a bug. We're talking about projects that affect the lives of tens, sometimes hundreds of people directly and many more indirectly. We're investing tens and thousands and millions of dollars. The stakes are high, so it's okay that it takes time. If there's one thing that you take away from this presentation, it's that when you do embark on your own project, new construction, retrofit, whatever it is, settle in. It will take time, and that's okay. Just bring your best self and lean on the supports that are available to you. The rest will come from that. That's it for today, folks. I'm happy to take more questions.
Thank you so much, Dami and Majed. We only have 2 minutes left, so I think we are going to take one last question in the chat that was left. And after that, we are going to wrap up in 2 minutes sharp. So the questions were about, and I think it's there is a nice link with what you said about the REC team, but are there any incentives available for nonprofit organizations since they are a cultural center? So any incentives for nonprofits?
If I heard correctly, a cultural center, not housing.
Yeah.
So my area of focus is housing. So I will say I can't speak to this very well, but I just anecdotally, I know of at least one organization off the top of my head that's actually a cultural center as well that got incentives here in BC. So they do exist. We probably won't be as helpful for that, but you can look for those, and I'm sure you'll be able to find something.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much to both of you, Majed and Dami. Feel free to visit the programmation of the webinar series because we have several dates coming up. And the next one will be about consolidation of housing providers in Eastern Quebec. And it will be on May the 21st. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Bye.